Understanding negative behaviors is key to be able to start making changes. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mind Engineer Community live sessions. This is Tommy Walker, the Mind Engineer, and I want to share insight and tools to help you start making changes. I struggled for many years and was trying different techniques out there. I tried affirmations, positivity. I tried creating small steps towards making changes, and nothing seemed to work. So many years later, after feeling very frustrated, very, uncomfortable, feeling that, nothing seems to work, there might be something wrong with me, I met a mentor that started teaching me what I've been sharing for the last 16 years and has helped me and thousands of people around the world. We need to understand how behaviors, in this case, negative behaviors, were created in the first place. Is we're trying to change something and we don't know how it is that it's working, unfortunately, it makes it very difficult to be able to do that. So what I want to share today is how to start making changes. Yes. So the first thing is, if I want to fix a car, I need to understand how a car works. If I want to fix something, I need to understand how it works. I'm not saying that the mind is broken. Don't get me wrong. I'm using that analogy just to make it easier. But the truth is, we need to really understand what's going on in our mind that is creating these different beliefs, stories that are then creating these behaviors. Okay, because a lot of people, what they're doing out there is they're beating themselves up when they're not, in a way, behaving the way they should, or they're beating themselves up because of the way they're behaving. So if you want to really start making changes, we need to really understand how the mind works. So let me get here. Richard is coming in. There we go. So to be able to understand how the mind works, we need to learn these two basic concepts. I believe that we're spiritual beings living a human experience. So from spirit, there's going to be certain behaviors, and from the human side, there's going to be other behaviors. What does that mean? So when I'm procrastinating, when I'm falling into people pleasing, when I'm falling into perfectionism, when I'm falling in many negative behaviors, like maybe eating, drinking, or whatever, we need to understand that that comes from hurting parts, that comes from ego. And what other people do is they try to control their behaviors, right, to make changes. And control, we need to understand, that comes from ego. It doesn't come from spirit. Control comes from ego. So whenever I'm trying to control behaviors, we need to understand that we're not actually coming from, our most elevated part, our true self. We're coming from ego. So ego is trying to control ego. Listen to that again. Ego is trying to control ego. So how is it going to work if a part of me that is hurting is trying to control another part of me that is hurting? It's not going to work. And that's why so many people out there are struggling to make changes, because they don't understand how the mind works. Okay? So, reviewing that again, ego is hurting. And from hurting is going to create behaviors to try to do two main things. One is to try to feel love and acceptance. That's one of the main reasons why ego creates behavior, to try to feel loved and acceptance. So how could that look like? It could be looking like, people pleasing, because when I please people, I might be loved and accepted. Okay. Another thing that could happen is that I could be, wanting to be successful, wanting to have money. Because if I have money, I might have learned that if I have money, I'm going to be able to be loved and accepted. You see how we go back to love and acceptance. Perfectionism, again, has to do with feeling love and acceptance. On the other side, looking at the different behaviors from the other side that is not seeking for love and acceptance, it could be numbing the pain of the lack of love and acceptance. That's what creates also negative behaviors. What are some examples of those negative behaviors? It could be smoking, it could be drinking, it could be sleeping, it could be procrastination. I'm avoiding doing something because I don't want to receive judgment or criticism, right? Because if I try something and it goes wrong, I might feel bad about myself. I might confirm that I'm not good enough. So the mind says, how can I protect myself from confirming the stories and narratives I have in the subconscious mind that I'm not good enough? By not taking actions, or by going to perfectionism, or different types of behaviors, as I was just saying. So each time you're having a negative behavior, the first thing you need to do is to ask yourself, what is this protecting me from? Or a variation of that is, how is this benefiting me? What is the benefit behind the behavior? Yes, this is very important. What is the benefit of this behavior? And not a lot of people say, like, oh, there's no benefit from this. Yes, there is always a benefit. If I'm doing something, there is a benefit. You might not be seeing it. Like, I have worked with a lot of people that have done what most people call self-sabotage, self-destruction, but the truth is there was a reason behind it. I was working with a guy that when he was a kid, he was beaten up very often by his parents. So nowadays he would, in a way, self-destruct would be the name that most people use, but I use protective mechanism, create a protective mechanism of destroying whatever he was doing, because if he didn't do it well, or if he didn't go as far as he wanted, or if he didn't do it as expected, he would bring up all the things that his parents brought up or made him feel when he was a kid, like not feeling good enough, a failure, that he's worth nothing, and all these things. So look, listen to this. For this person, it was better to sabotage before getting an outcome, because if the outcome wasn't the expected, he was going to beat the crap out of himself mentally and emotionally. So it was worse getting to the end result and beating himself up. That was worse than, in a way, sabotaging to not get to the final line, to the end, because in that way, although he beat himself up, the beating was less. Because if I ask you, type it in the chat, okay, if you're watching, right? What would you prefer? Would you prefer a beating that is 10 out of 10, or a beating, if you need to choose two beatings, one of these two, you cannot choose something different, a 10 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10 beating? What would you prefer? And I'm pretty sure what the answer is. For most people, it would be, I would rather be beaten up 5 out of 10, the strength of the beating, 5 out of 10, than a 10 out of 10. So if 10 out of 10 is that I try something and it doesn't go well, and then I'm going to be beaten up 5 out of 10, I would rather be beaten up 5 out of 10. So my mind is going to create behaviors to stop me from doing what I need to do so that I avoid that beating up. So now, from seeing that as the enemy, the self-sabotage, the perfectionism, or whatever it is that you're beating yourself up, the idea is to see it in a more loving way, guys. We need to see those parts of us in a more loving way, understand that those parts of us are trying to protect us. They're not trying to screw up our lives. They're not trying to, destroy us like the way people see it. They're not the enemy. There we go. They're not the enemy. It's a part of you that is trying to protect you from the biggest hurting that you could experience, from the bigger pain. So when we look at ourselves in a more compassionate way, that part of me that is trying to protect me, it makes it easier to reduce the beating up to try to change. What do I mean with this? Most people are beating themselves up because they're procrastinating, because they're self-sabotaging, because they're falling into perfectionism, because whatever they're doing, they're beating themselves up because of what they're doing. They're beating themselves up because of the behavior, smoking, drinking. So instead of beating yourself up, I want to invite you to start practicing self-love that looks like compassion, acceptance, understanding, support. Because how do you normally react when you feel loved, when you feel compassion from somebody else, when you feel understood from somebody else, when you feel supported by somebody else? You tend to open up. So when you tend to open up, it means that you're more, in a way, open, again, sorry, but open to be able to change. When you focus on change, you're coming from ego. You're not coming from the best place that you could to be able to start bringing changes. So my invitation is to start practicing this self-love, loving and accepting every part of you. Because again, when we understand that procrastination is a protective mechanism because of a part of us that might be feeling not so loved and accepted, it didn't feel loved and accepted as a kid growing up, the lack of love made us believe that we were not good enough, that we were not deserving, that there was something wrong with us. So from that story that we told ourselves, that narrative, we trigger emotions. Those negative emotions, the mind is trying to protect us from the negative emotions, but at the end, it's trying to protect us from the story that we're telling ourselves, the narratives. So it's going to create a behavior to protect us from feeling those negative emotions, from confirming those negative stories, those narratives that we created in the first place. So instead of attacking your behaviors, the parts of you that created those behaviors, I want you to start practicing loving and accepting those parts of you that created those behaviors. See them as your best friend with limited knowledge, limited information, that didn't know better and created those beliefs that then created those emotions that created those behaviors that are now getting in the way in your life, in different aspects of your life. So if you want to become your greatest version, your greatest potential, if you want to connect with your inner wisdom, even if you want to connect with God, universe, higher self, we need to start practicing unconditional love. Because it's this love that we lacked in the beginning that created the cascade of what we see now as problems, but actually they're protective mechanism. The only thing that is going to really dissolve that behavior, release those emotions, and change those narratives is compassion, is acceptance, is support, is understanding, is at the end love. The love that I have for my kids, how can you practice that for yourself? Because God, the universe, has that love for you and it is within you. So it is discovering this. And by practicing this process that I call rapid subconscious reprogramming of really loving and accepting yourself in every aspect, even what some people call negative, right? As we love and accept every part of us, the behaviors that might be getting in the way that are coming from ego are going to start dissolving because you're starting to connect more with your true self. And from your true self, you don't need those behaviors. You don't need protecting. You are already. So as we practice that self-love, we become more who we are meant to be. And we don't need those behaviors. So those behaviors dissolve. Some people call it change. I call it dissolve because again, when we focus on changing those behaviors, we're coming from ego. We're not coming from spirit. We're not coming from our true self. So learn to connect with love, practice that, practice loving and accepting the parts of you that might not be going the way that you would like to, behaving the way that you would like to, and you're going to see how things start changing. So again, understanding negative behaviors is key to be able to start making changes. And doesn't mean changing the behavior. It means loving and accepting yourself. That in turn is going to bring that dissolve of the behavior. Let me know what you think in the chat. If you're liking this, if it makes sense. I'm about to launch an update to my book. Remember, I wrote the book, The Science Behind the Mind and Behavior. I kind of updated it, changed it, the cover and everything, and it's now called what's the name the revolution, the love revolution. Sorry, there we go. The Love Revolution. I'm launching the book. I'm relaunching the book with a new face, with more insight, more tools inside to be able to start helping to practice that compassion, that self-love to ourselves and to others. Because what the world needs is more love. And as we practice that with ourselves, loving and accepting every part of us, it's going to make it easier to then do that to others and start being able to dissolve what we might be doing from the ego and start becoming more who we're meant to be. So if you're interested, if you are liking what I'm saying and you would like to have a copy of my book, type book underneath, and I'm going to send you the link to get this new version. If you already had the book, type book update, and we're going to get you the update of the book for free. So if you already have a version of the book, the older book, we'll get you the new book so you can take a look at it and enjoy it. It has more insight, more tools to help you start making changes by becoming who you're meant to be and letting go who you're not. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know again in the chat if you were watching live, #live. If you're watching replay, #replay. And I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you, everyone. Take care and have a great day. Bye.